The rain had been falling for hours, a relentless, silver whisper against the ancient windowpanes of Blackwood Manor. Ilara traced a finger over the condensation, watching the blurred world outside dissolve into shades of grey and emerald. A storm, the kind that felt less like a passing squall and more like a permanent state of the world, had settled over the estate the moment her car crunched onto the gravel drive. It was precisely what she had sought: isolation, dramatic beauty, and a powerful, all-encompassing quiet. The manor itself was a testament to forgotten grandeur, a sprawling Gothic edifice that breathed history from its stone walls and dark timber beams. Inside, however, a surprising warmth permeated the vast spaces. A fire crackled in the hearth of the drawing room, its flames dancing across the polished surfaces of antique furniture and illuminating the intricate patterns of a Persian rug. The air was thick with the scent of burning cedar and something else, something subtly spicy and masculine, that lingered like a ghost in the shadows. She had arrived hours ago, settling into her assigned wing, a suite of rooms overlooking a wild, untamed garden. The housekeeper, a stoic woman with eyes that held centuries of unspoken stories, had shown her around with a quiet efficiency, then vanished, leaving Ilara to the vast, echoing silence. It was a silence she had craved, a balm for a soul that had recently been battered by the clamor of the city and the harsh light of public scrutiny. She was here to write, to reclaim the words that had become elusive, to find the muse that had fled in the face of expectation. Now, curled on a velvet-covered chaise longue, a book forgotten in her lap, she let her gaze drift around the room. The decor was rich, almost opulent, yet not ostentatious. Deep jewel tones, sapphire, emerald, ruby, were woven to tapestries and upholstery, contrasting with the dark wood and cream-colored plaster. Every piece of furniture seemed to have a story, every painting on the wall a secret. It felt less like a temporary stay and more like stepping into a living, breathing past. A sudden gust of wind rattled the window, and a shiver ran through Ilara, though not from cold. It was an anticipatory shiver, a sensation that something was about to shift, that the solitude she had embraced was about to be broken. She told herself it was the storm, the wildness outside seeping into the quiet corners of the house. But a deeper instinct, a feminine intuition that hummed beneath her skin, suggested otherwise. A floorboard creaked somewhere above her, a soft, deliberate sound that broke the symphony of the rain. Ilara's breath hitched. She was supposed to be alone. The housekeeper had left for the evening, leaving her with explicit instructions and the promise of breakfast. Her heart began to beat a little faster, a soft thrum against her ribs. She wasn't afraid, not exactly, but a profound curiosity stirred within her. The sound came again, closer this time, accompanied by a faint, rhythmic cadence, like heavy, measured footsteps descending a grand staircase. She pushed herself up, the velvet of the chaise longue whispering against her dress, a soft, dark green fabric that clung to her curves and fell to her ankles. She moved towards the archway that led into the main hall, her steps light, barely disturbing the stillness. And then she saw him. He was standing at the foot of the magnificent oak staircase, his back to her, a silhouette against the leaded glass of the front door. He was tall, undeniably so, with broad shoulders that strained the fabric of his dark, impeccably tailored jacket. His hair, dark as midnight and slightly damp, curled just at the nape of his neck. He moved with a languid grace as he reached out, not to the door, but to a small, antique table beside it, picking up a heavy silver letter opener. He turned it over in his fingers, his movements economical, almost predatory. Ilara found herself holding her breath, a strange mix of apprehension and exhilaration coiling in her stomach. He was the owner, she realized, the mysterious Rhys Thorne, whose name had been uttered by her agent with a mixture of reverence and warning. A reclusive patron of the arts, known for his discerning eye and his formidable reputation. She had been warned he was rarely present at the manor, preferring his London residence. But that when he was, his presence was considerable. As if sensing her gaze, he slowly turned. His eyes were the first thing that struck her. They were a startling shade of hazel, flecked with gold, and they held an intensity that seemed to pierce through the dim light of the hall and settle directly upon her. There was no surprise in them, only a deep, knowing appraisal that made her feel utterly seen, as though he'd been expecting her, not just in this moment, but always. A faint smile, almost imperceptible, touched the corner of his mouth, softening the chiseled lines of his jaw. "Ilara," he said, his voice a low rumble that resonated through the quiet hall, like a chord struck on a cello. It was a voice that promised secrets, a voice that could coax confessions from the most guarded heart. "I trust Mrs. Finch settled you in." His accent was cultivated, with a hint of something deeper, something ancient and European that Ilara couldn't quite place. She found herself unable to do anything but nod, her throat suddenly dry. She felt like a moth drawn irrevocably to a flame, a dangerous, beautiful flame. He took a step towards her, then another, his gaze never leaving hers. "I apologize for not being here to greet you properly," he continued, his voice closer now, richer. "The weather complicated my return from the city. I confess, I prefer not to travel in such conditions." He gestured vaguely towards the rattling windows. "No apology necessary," Ilara managed, finding her voice at last, though it sounded a little breathy even to her own ears. Mrs. Finch was very efficient. He stopped a few feet from her, close enough for her to catch the subtle scent of him, a sophisticated blend of old leather, wood smoke, and something uniquely his, something warm and utterly captivating. He was even more imposing up close, his frame radiating a quiet power. His eyes, those golden-flecked hazel eyes, held hers in a silent dialogue that bypassed words, speaking instead of instinct and recognition. "I hope the journey wasn't too arduous," he said, his gaze dropping momentarily to her lips, then back up to her eyes, a fleeting, almost imperceptible movement that sent a jolt of heat through her. "It was an adventure," she replied, a faint smile playing on her own lips. "The roads leading here are certainly not for the faint of heart." He chuckled, a soft, deep sound that sent another shiver down her spine. "That's part of its charm. Wouldn't you agree? A certain removal from the mundane." He gestured towards the drawing room. "Please, don't let me keep you standing in the hall. The fire looks inviting." He followed her, his presence a warm weight at her back, a silent invitation to a closeness that was both unnerving and deeply alluring. She moved back to the chaise, but instead of resuming her previous position, she stood by the mantelpiece, pretending to examine a bronze statuette of a reclining lioness. Her fingers traced the cold metal, a grounding sensation against the sudden rush of her pulse. Whis moved to the opposite side of the hearth, his movements fluid and unhurried. He picked up a poker and stirred the embers, sending a shower of sparks dancing up the chimney. The firelight played over his strong profile, highlighting the sharp line of his nose and the curve of his lips. "So," he said without looking at her, "you're here to write. Mrs. Finch mentioned you're a novelist." "Yes," Ilara confirmed, her voice steadier now, finding its professional footing. "I'm working on a new historical fiction piece. This place, with its history, its atmosphere, it felt like the perfect sanctuary." He finally looked at her, his eyes warm with an unspoken understanding. "It is that. This house has seen centuries of stories, whispered through its walls, woven into its very fabric. Perhaps it will lend you some of its own." "I hope so," she said, meeting his gaze directly. "My last project. It was difficult to finish. I needed a change of scenery, a break from distractions." "Distractions are everywhere, Ilara," he mused, his voice dropping to a lower register. "Sometimes the greatest ones are within ourselves." The observation was so acute, so perfectly aligned with her own struggles, that it disarmed her. She found herself nodding slowly, a silent acknowledgement of the truth in his words. There was an intimacy in this brief exchange, a recognition of shared understanding that felt remarkably swift, almost startling. He placed the poker back with a soft clang, then turned to face her fully, leaning an arm against the mantelpiece. His stance was casual, yet his eyes remained intensely focused on her. "May I offer you something to drink? I imagine the journey and the storm have made you thirsty. A single malt, perhaps, or a good claret." "A claret would be lovely, thank you," she said, appreciating the old-world formality. He nodded, a faint smile on his lips again, and moved towards a dark wood cabinet in the corner of the room. As he walked, she noticed the subtle ripple of muscles beneath his suit jacket, the confident stride that spoke of a man entirely at ease in his own skin, in his own domain. He poured 2 glasses of deep ruby-red wine, the liquid gleaming in the firelight. He brought 1 glass to her, his fingers brushing hers as she took it, a spark, not of static, but of something far more potent, arching between them. Her skin tingled where he had touched her, and she felt a warmth spread through her veins that had nothing to do with the wine. "To inspiration," he murmured, raising his glass, his eyes holding hers over the rim. "To inspiration," she echoed, taking a slow, deliberate sip. The wine was rich, complex, with notes of dark berries and earth. It was a wine that had aged gracefully, a wine that knew its own worth. Much like the man standing before her. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the distant drumming of the rain. Elara found herself studying him, allowing her right eye to absorb every detail. The subtle scar that ran through his left eyebrow, the strong column of his throat, the way his dark hair fell just so, inviting a touch. He was not conventionally handsome in the way of a polished celebrity, but there was a raw, rugged beauty to him, an intelligence and depth that was far more compelling. "Are you planning to stay long, Whis?" she asked, breaking the quiet, the sound of his name on her tongue, a soft, pleasant surprise. He took a sip of his wine, his gaze thoughtful. "My plans are, as ever, fluid. I find myself drawn here when the city becomes too much. It offers a certain clarity, doesn't it?" "It does," Elara agreed, thinking of the chaotic rush she had left behind. A space to breathe. "Exactly." He pushed off the mantelpiece, moving towards a large armchair upholstered in deep emerald velvet. He settled into it with a sigh that seemed to melt into the cushions, his long legs stretching out before him. "Please, make yourself comfortable. This house demands ease." Elara hesitated for a moment, then moved to the chaise longue again, settling back onto the soft velvet, her gaze still drawn to him. The fire cast flickering shadows on the high ceilings, making the room feel both vast and intimately enclosed. "Tell me about your book," he prompted, his voice soft, inviting. "What era calls to you now?" She found herself speaking freely, drawn in by the quiet intensity of his attention. She described the period, the characters, the historical figures she was attempting to bring to life. She spoke of the challenges, the intricacies of research, the desire to breathe authentic life into forgotten lives. He listened, his head tilted slightly, his eyes never leaving her face, absorbing every word, every nuance. His questions were astute, revealing a surprising depth of knowledge about the period she was describing. He offered insights, suggested obscure texts, and even recounted anecdotes about certain historical figures that she had never come across in her own extensive research. It was stimulating, invigorating, and utterly captivating. As the hours passed, the rain outside intensified, turning the world into a blurred canvas of sound and shadow. The fire in the hearth dwindled to glowing embers, but the warmth between them seemed to grow, a palpable energy that filled the space. They talked of books, of art, of philosophy, of life and death, of the subtle currents that ran beneath the surface of human existence. Elara had never felt such an immediate, profound connection with anyone. It was as if their minds were perfectly attuned, their spirits recognizing a kindred spark. She found herself laughing more freely than she had in months, enjoying the sharp wit and dry humor that occasionally surfaced beneath his serious demeanor. At one point, he rose to replenish their glasses, and as he walked past her, his hand briefly rested on the back of her chaise, a light, almost accidental touch that nevertheless sent a wave of exquisite sensation through her. Her breath hitched again, and she fought the urge to lean into the warmth of his fingers, to let his touch linger. The night deepened, the clock on the mantelpiece chiming midnight with a sonorous, ancient tone. The storm showed no signs of abating, wrapping the manor in a cocoon of sound and intimacy. Elara felt a delicious weariness settle over her, a contentment she hadn't known she was missing. "It's late," she said, a soft lament in her voice, unwilling to break the spell. Rhys looked at her, his eyes molten gold in the fading firelight. "Is it?" he murmured, as if time held no meaning within these walls, within their conversation. "I confess, I've lost all sense of it." He rose slowly from his armchair, moving towards her with a deliberate grace. He stopped before the chaise, looking down at her, his presence utterly commanding. The air around them crackled, charged with unspoken desires, with the undeniable pull that had been building between them all evening. "You have a remarkable mind, Elara," he said, his voice a low, husky whisper that seemed to caress her name. "And a captivating spirit." Her heart hammered against her ribs, a wild drumbeat in the quiet room. She looked up at him, her gaze meeting his, and saw the reflection of her own longing in the depths of his eyes. The hazel had darkened, deepening to an almost predatory gold, and a hunger, raw and beautiful, burned within them. He reached out, his hand hovering inches from her face, then slowly, deliberately, he cupped her jaw. His thumb brushed softly over her cheekbone, sending a shiver of pure sensation through her. His touch was warm, firm, exquisitely gentle. Elara leaned into it instinctively, her eyes fluttering closed for a moment, savoring the feeling. "Rhys," she breathed, her voice barely a whisper, a plea, and a surrender intertwined. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there. A silent question, an undeniable invitation. The air was thick with the scent of him, the quiet hum of their combined desires. She felt the heat radiating from his hand, the subtle tremor in his fingers, mirroring the tremble in her own body. "Velvet whispers, Elara," he murmured, his voice so low she almost didn't hear it over the pounding of her heart. "This house is full of them, and tonight so are we." His thumb stroked her lower lip, a feather-light touch that sent a bolt of pure electricity through her. Her lips parted slightly in response, an unspoken invitation. His eyes, dark with desire, held hers, asking permission, demanding acknowledgement. The fire in the hearth was almost out, leaving the room in a soft, sensual gloom. The rain continued its relentless rhythm outside, a soothing counterpoint to the storm brewing within them. She knew with an absolute certainty that this moment was a precipice, a threshold from which there would be no turning back. And she wanted, with every fiber of her being, to step over it. His face drew closer, slowly, agonizingly slowly, until his breath mingled with hers, warm and tasting faintly of claret and something else, something intoxicatingly masculine. Her eyes fluttered open, meeting his, and in their depths she saw a promise, a hunger that mirrored her own. "May I?" he whispered, his voice rough with suppressed emotion, his gaze still fixed on her lips. A question that was less about a kiss and more about an entire universe of unspoken desires. Elara didn't answer with words. She simply tilted her head back, her eyes wide and vulnerable, a silent, unequivocal invitation. His head dipped, a slow, deliberate descent that gave Elara ample time to pull back, to question, to reconsider. But the thought never even brushed the edges of her mind. Instead, her breath caught, a fragile thing in her throat, as the heat radiating from him intensified, a palpable wave of desire that had nothing to do with the fire blazing cheerfully in the hearth behind them. His eyes, dark and fathomless, never left hers, holding her captive in a gaze that promised both exquisite tenderness and an untamed passion she instinctively knew would consume her. Then his lips, soft as velvet, brushed hers. It was a tentative exploration, a feather-light touch that sent a shiver, electric and profound, through every nerve ending in her body. A soft gasp escaped her, and in that instant, his mouth claimed hers with a newfound confidence. Not a forceful demand, but a deep, unyielding assertion, as if he had been waiting for this moment, for her, for an eternity. The taste of claret was there, a ghost of a memory on his lips, mingled with something else entirely, a heady, masculine musk that was uniquely his, intoxicating and utterly compelling. His upper lip, firm and sculpted, grazed the soft bow of her own, sending a spark of sensation that blossomed into a fiery warmth. Her lips parted instinctively, an invitation she couldn't have denied if she tried, and he accepted, deepening the kiss with a languid, searching tenderness that stole the air from her lungs. A soft moan rumbled in his chest, a low, guttural sound that vibrated against her own body as he leaned in further, his hand coming up to cup her jaw, his thumb stroking the delicate skin just beneath her ear. The subtle rasp of his skin against hers, the faint scent of spice and wood that clung to his fingers, was a further assault on her senses, driving her deeper into the intoxicating vortex he was creating. Her own hands, almost without conscious thought, lifted to grasp the lapels of his jacket, clinging to the fine wool as if it were the only tether keeping her grounded. The kiss deepened, becoming a slow, sensual dance of discovery. His tongue, warm and insistent, traced the seam of her lips, a silent plea for entry. Ilara, lost in the swirling sensations, opened to him, a soft sigh escaping her as his tongue met hers, a hesitant, then confident, exploration that sent a jolt straight to her core. It was a kiss that tasted of longing, of unspoken needs, of a burgeoning connection that felt both impossibly new and achingly ancient. Her fingers tightened on his jacket, her nails digging slightly into the fabric as a delicious tremor shook her. He pulled back, just barely, their foreheads still touching, his breath warm against her lip. His eyes, half-lidded and dark with desire, searched hers, as if seeking confirmation, an answer to a question too profound for words. Ilara could only gaze back, her own eyes wide and shimmering, reflecting the raw hunger she saw in his. She was breathless, light-headed, and utterly, gloriously undone. "Ilara," he murmured, his voice a low, rough caress, the sound vibrating through her, a private symphony meant only for her ears. He kissed her again, this time, a series of soft, lingering brushes, each one a promise, a question, an affirmation. His hand moved from her jaw, tracing the curve of her neck, his fingers tangling in the loose strands of hair that had escaped her intricate coiffure. He tugged gently, tilting her head back further, exposing the delicate line of her throat. A thrill, both exquisite and terrifying, shot through her as his lips followed the path of his fingers, pressing soft, tender kisses along her jawline, down to the pulse, throbbing frantically at the base of her throat. Her head fell back against his supporting hand, her eyes fluttering closed as she surrendered to the exquisite sensations. His breath fanned across her skin, warm and intoxicating, and she felt herself melting into him, her body molding against his hard, masculine frame. He smelled of sophisticated masculinity, a blend of fine tobacco, rich leather, and the subtle, earthy scent of a man who spent time outdoors, yet was impeccably groomed. It was a scent that spoke of confidence and experience, and it wrapped around her, pulling her deeper into his orbit. His other hand, which had been resting lightly on her waist, now slid lower, finding the soft curve of her hip, pressing her closer still. The sheer heat of his body, the firm press of his thigh against hers, sent a wave of liquid fire through her veins. "You're exquisite," he whispered against her skin, his voice thick with emotion, his words a caress more potent than any physical touch. He tasted the delicate skin of her throat, a soft, exploring nip that made her gasp, a shiver running through her from head to toe. Her own hands, no longer clutching his jacket, had somehow found their way beneath it, past the crisp linen of his shirt, to the warm, firm skin of his back. She felt the ripple of muscle beneath her fingertips, the sheer strength of him, and a fierce, primal surge of desire erupted within her. She wanted to feel more, to shed the layers that separated them, to know the full extent of this man who had so effortlessly captivated her. He lifted his head, his gaze dark and intense, meeting hers once more. "My dear Ilara," he breathed, his thumb gently stroking her cheekbone. You have no idea the effect you have on me." Ilara could only manage a shaky breath, her eyes still wide, her lips swollen and tingling from his kisses. She felt an answering tremor course through his body, a delicious confirmation of the profound effect she had on him as well. He didn't wait for a verbal answer. With a low groan, he swept her into his arms, lifting her effortlessly as if she weighed no more than a feather. A soft cry of surprise escaped her, quickly muffled by his lips as he claimed her mouth again, a deeper, more possessive kiss this time. Her arms instinctively wrapped around his neck, her legs tangling around his waist, holding on as he carried her through the dim hallway. The world spun, but not from dizziness. It spun with the exhilarating rush of pure, unadulterated sensation. The warmth of his arms, the strength of his embrace, the intoxicating scent of him, it was all-consuming. He moved with a quiet grace, his boots making no sound on the polished wooden floor. The firelight flickered behind them, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to follow their every move, heightening the sense of illicit enchantment. Ilara buried her face in the curve of his neck, inhaling his scent, feeling the strong beat of his heart against her cheek. She was utterly safe, utterly desired, and utterly lost in the moment. He pushed open the door to her bedroom with his shoulder, the soft click echoing in the hushed silence of the house. The room was bathed in the soft ethereal glow of moonlight filtering through the large windows, augmented by the gentle light of a single bedside lamp that cast a warm, inviting pool of amber. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of lavender from the potpourri on her dresser, and the rich, comforting smell of old books and polished wood. He carried her directly to the large four-poster bed, its heavy velvet drapes drawn back, revealing crisp white linen sheets and an array of plush pillows. He lowered her gently onto the edge of the mattress, his hands never leaving her, his body still pressed intimately against hers. The soft give of the mattress beneath her was a luxurious contrast to the hard planes of his body. He stood between her knees, his gaze still locked onto hers, a silent question once more hanging in the air. Ilara's fingers, still around his neck, now began to trace the strong line of his jaw, feeling the slight stubble there, the warmth of his skin. She wanted to say something, anything, but words felt inadequate, clumsy, an intrusion on the profound silence that had fallen between them. Her answer was in the slight tremor of her hands, the rapid flutter of her pulse, the undeniable heat that bloomed low in her belly. With a slow, deliberate movement, he reached up and unfastened the first button of his jacket, his eyes still holding hers. The small, almost inaudible sound of the button slipping from its hole was deafening in the quiet room. Then another, and another, until the heavy wool garment hung open, revealing the crisp white linen shirt beneath. He shrugged it off, letting it fall to the floor in a soft heap, his gaze never breaking from hers. Ilara watched, mesmerized, as the moonlight sculpted the broad expanse of his shoulders, the powerful lines of his chest, barely visible beneath the fine fabric of his shirt. He was a creature of shadow and light, a breathtaking vision of masculine grace. Her hands, compelled by an irresistible urge, moved from his neck to the broad expanse of his shoulders, feeling the firm, warm muscle beneath the thin shirt. He reached for her then, his fingers brushing against the delicate lace of her sleeve, then slowly, tantalizingly, began to unpin her hair. Each pin, meticulously placed earlier that evening, was removed with a tender precision, his knuckles occasionally brushing against her scalp, sending shivers down her spine. The heavy mass of her hair, rich and dark, tumbled down her back in a silken cascade, freed from its confines. He threaded his fingers through it, lifting a heavy lock to his nose, inhaling deeply. "Like silk," he murmured, his voice a low thrum against her ear as he leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "And it smells of moonlight and roses." Ilara shivered again, not from cold, but from the sheer intimacy of his words, of his touch. She felt utterly vulnerable, utterly exposed, and yet, paradoxically, more powerful than she had ever felt in her life. This man, with his quiet strength and profound passion, saw her, truly saw her, in a way no one ever had. His hands moved from her hair, tracing the slender curve of her neck, then settling on her shoulders. He began to unfasten the tiny pearl buttons that ran down the back of her gown. It was a slow, agonizingly tender process, each button a small act of surrender, a further shedding of the barriers between them. His fingers were warm against her skin as he worked, occasionally brushing against the delicate lace of her undergarments, sending sparks of sensation along her spine. The gown, a shimmering confection of silk and lace, finally sagged, pooling around her waist. He paused, his hands resting on her bare shoulders, his thumbs stroking the soft skin, sending goosebumps dancing across her arms. Ilara felt the cool air on her bared skin, a stark contrast to the burning heat that coursed through her veins. She was clad only in her chemise and corset, the delicate lace and silk doing little to conceal the rising swell of her breasts, the narrow curve of her waist. His gaze dropped, lingering on the delicate lace that adorned the neckline of her chemise, then moving lower, to the soft swell of her décolletage. His eyes were dark pools of desire, reflecting the moonlight and the burgeoning hunger in his depths. He reached out, his finger tracing the delicate lace, then gently pushed aside the fabric, exposing the creamy skin beneath. A soft gasp escaped her, and he leaned in, pressing a tender kiss to the exposed skin, just above her heart. "You are exquisite," he whispered again, his breath warm against her skin, his voice thick with emotion. "A masterpiece." Ilara's hands, still on his shoulders, now moved lower, to the buttons of his shirt. She fumbled slightly, her fingers trembling with a mixture of eagerness and nerves, but he didn't intervene, allowing her to take her time. One by one she unfastened the small round buttons, her fingers brushing against the warm skin of his chest beneath. The soft linen parted, revealing the taut muscular expanse of his chest, dusted with dark fine hair that tapered to a narrow line before disappearing beneath his trousers. He smelled of warm skin and pure masculinity, a scent that was utterly intoxicating. Her fingers, emboldened, splayed across his chest, feeling the hard planes of muscle, the steady beat of his heart beneath her palm. It was a powerful, comforting rhythm that resonated deep within her own soul. With a low groan, he reached for the ribbon that laced her corset, his fingers nimble and sure despite the tremor she felt running through him. The intricate lacing designed to cinch and sculpt was no match for his focused intent. With a few deft movements, the ribbon loosened, and the corset, a garment that had felt like a second skin for so long, suddenly felt restrictive, unnecessary. She exhaled slowly as it began to loosen, a sense of liberation washing over her. He helped her shed the remaining layers, the corset and chemise joining the gown in a silken heap on the floor. Now, she was completely bare, save for the faint blush that crept up her neck and across her cheeks. The moonlight, no longer obscured by fabric, bathed her skin in a soft silver glow, highlighting the curves and hollows of her body. She felt a flicker of shyness, a fleeting moment of vulnerability, but it was quickly eclipsed by the intense heat of his gaze, a gaze that was filled with reverence, not judgment. He knelt before her, his hands resting gently on her bare thighs, his eyes still locked on hers. "Beautiful," he murmured, his voice a raw whisper. He leaned forward, pressing soft, reverent kisses to her knees. Then, slowly, exquisitely, up the inside of her thighs. Each kiss was a spark, igniting a new wave of sensation, a deeper thrum of desire that spread through her, coiling in her belly. Ilara gasped, her fingers tangling in his dark hair, pulling him closer, yet wanting him to linger, to prolong the exquisite torture. Her body arched, a silent plea for more, for him to consume her entirely. She felt a delicious ache building, a hunger that echoed the one she saw burning in his eyes. He rose then, his powerful body moving with an unhurried grace. He reached for the buckle of his trousers, his movements slow and deliberate, each click and rustle of fabric a further promise. Ilara watched, mesmerized, as he shed the last of his clothes, revealing the full glory of his magnificent form. He was every inch the powerful, sensuous man she had imagined, his body a testament to strength and primal beauty. He stood before her, bathed in the moonlight, a vision of masculine perfection. His eyes, dark and heavy-lidded, met hers, reflecting the profound intimacy of the moment. There was no shame, no hesitation, only a shared vulnerability and an undeniable magnetic pull. He reached for her, his hands tenderly cupping her face, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. His lips descended, claiming hers in a kiss that was both tender and fiercely passionate, a kiss that spoke of a hunger finally unleashed. She tasted him, truly tasted him, and it was wild and primal and utterly intoxicating. Her arms wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer, pressing her bare body against his, feeling the delicious contrast of their skin. He lifted her then, not to carry her, but to guide her onto the bed. She sank into the cool, crisp sheets, her body still humming with 1,000 sensations. He followed, his weight settling beside her, the mattress dipping beneath them. He pulled a duvet over them, a soft, warm cocoon that enveloped them in shared warmth and intimacy. Lying on her side, facing him, Ilara gazed into his eyes. They were no longer just dark pools, but windows to a soul that was as hungry and passionate as her own. His hand reached out, his fingers tracing the curve of her hip, then moving up to her waist, then her ribs, finally coming to rest gently on the soft swell of her breast. A gasp escaped her, a fragile sound in the quiet room, as his thumb brushed against her nipple, sending a shockwave of pleasure through her. Her own hand, almost involuntarily, found his chest, her fingers weaving through the fine hair, feeling the strong, steady beat of his heart. She leaned into his touch, her body responding with an almost desperate eagerness, a yearning that had been dormant for too long, now bursting forth with an undeniable intensity. He leaned in, his lips brushing against her ear, his breath warm and intoxicating. "I have wanted you, Ilara," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion, "since the moment I first saw you." The admission sent a delicious shiver through her, a confirmation of the electric current that had sparked between them from their very first encounter. She arched into him, her body a silent affirmation of her own desperate longing. His lips found hers again, a slow, deep kiss that promised everything, a universe of unspoken desires finally on the brink of being realized. Their bodies pressed closer, seeking, yearning. The warmth of him, the scent of him, the taste of him. It was an overwhelming symphony of sensation that consumed her entirely. His hand moved, slowly, deliberately, down the curve of her spine, pressing her closer still, until there was no space left between them. The delicate lace of the sheets against her skin, the soft glow of moonlight illuminating their entwined forms, the rhythmic beat of their mingled hearts, it was all a prelude, a sweet, agonizing anticipation of the profound intimacy that awaited them. Ilara tangled her legs with his, her body alive with a burning need that mirrored his own. Her fingers gripped his shoulders, her nails digging in slightly as a wave of intense pleasure washed over her. He moved against her, a slow, deliberate rhythm that drove her to the brink, her breath coming in short, ragged gasps. She looked into his eyes, and in their depths, she saw not just desire, but a profound connection, a shared destiny that felt both inevitable and exhilarating. She was ready. More than ready. She was utterly, completely his. He shifted, a breathy groan escaping his lips as he claimed her fully, deeply, a sensation so profound it stole the air from her lungs. A gasp hitched in her throat, a sound of pure, unadulterated pleasure mixed with a fleeting surprise at the sheer intensity of it. He filled her completely, a perfect, exquisite fit that made her arch into him, her body instinctively seeking to draw him even closer, to absorb him entirely. Her eyes fluttered shut for a moment, savoring the overwhelming sensation, the warmth, the pressure, the incredible fullness that vibrated through her very core. When she opened them again, his gaze was still locked with hers, a tender ferocity burning in their depths. He didn't move immediately, allowing them both to adjust, to acclimate to this profound new state of being, intertwined and inseparable. His chest rose and fell heavily against hers, their breaths mingling in the charged air, a testament to the raw primal energy thrumming between them. A slow, knowing smile touched his lips, a silent question in his eyes. She answered with a slight tilt of her head, a whisper of a nod, a silent plea for him to continue. And he did. His hips began to move, a slow, deliberate thrust that drew another soft moan from her. It was a rhythm born of instinct, ancient and undeniable, a dance between two souls finally finding their perfect cadence. Each movement was a declaration, a promise, a deepening of the connection that had been building between them since the moment their eyes first met. He drew back, just enough to heighten the anticipation, then plunged forward again, eliciting a soft cry from her, a sound that was half pleasure, half surrender. Her fingers, still gripping his shoulders, now traced the powerful muscles of his back, feeling the ripple and flex beneath her touch with each powerful stroke. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the subtle dampness of his skin against hers, a testament to the effort and passion he poured into every movement. Her hips began to mirror his, rising to meet him, her body learning the rhythm of his, urging him deeper, faster. The bed beneath them groaned softly in protest, a symphony of their shared desire. He leaned down, his lips finding the sensitive curve of her neck, sending shivers down her spine. His teeth nipped gently, possessively, then his tongue soothed the spot, leaving a trail of fire in its wake. "Beautiful," he murmured, his voice a husky rumble against her skin. "So incredibly beautiful." His words, whispered in the throes of their passion, ignited a new spark within her. It wasn't just the physical sensation, profound as it was, but the emotional resonance of his adoration that truly overwhelmed her. She felt seen, desired, cherished in a way she never had before. Her legs wrapped around his waist, pulling him even closer, desperate to eliminate any space between them. The friction intensified, building to a thrilling crescendo that threatened to shatter her composure. Her head fell back against the pillows, her hair fanning out like a dark halo around her face. Her eyes squeezed shut, as wave after wave of pleasure washed over her. He watched her, his own breath ragged, a fierce protectiveness warring with the raw hunger in his gaze. He wanted to savor every nuance of her pleasure, to witness her surrender, to be the architect of her delight. The tempo quickened, no longer a slow dance but a wild, fervent chase. He drove into her with an urgency that mirrored her own, their bodies slamming together with a primal force that left them both breathless. Her nails scraped lightly down his back, not in pain but in a desperate need to anchor herself to him, to this incredible sensation that threatened to consume her entirely. She felt her core tighten, a delicious tension coiling deep within her, growing tighter and tighter with each thrust. "Look at me," he commanded, his voice strained with effort, yet imbued with an unwavering intensity. Her eyes flew open, meeting his, and in their depths, she saw his own battle, his own struggle for control, for prolonging this exquisite torment. A tremor ran through her, a premonition of the coming release. Her hips bucked up to meet him, a silent plea for more, for everything. He plunged deep, holding her there, utterly filled, utterly possessed. A guttural groan tore from his throat as the first ripples of her climax began, vibrating through her, through him, a shared tremor that shook them to their very foundations. Her body arched high, a cry escaping her lips, a sound of pure, unadulterated ecstasy that echoed in the quiet room. Her muscles clenched around him, milking every last drop of pleasure from him, drawing him further and further into her release. He felt her tighten around him, a sensation so overwhelming, it pushed him over the edge. With a primal roar, he thrust into her one last powerful time, pouring himself into her, his body shuddering violently as his own release cascaded through him. He collapsed onto her, heavy and spent, his face buried in the crook of her neck, their bodies still joined, still trembling with the aftershocks of their shared climax. The world seemed to blur, reduced to the pounding of their hearts, the raggedness of their breaths, the slick warmth of their skin. They lay there, entwined, For what felt like an eternity, the silence punctuated only by their gasps for air. The intensity slowly ebbed, replaced by a profound sense of peace, a quiet contentment that settled deep within their bones. He stirred first, lifting his head just enough to look at her, his eyes still clouded with passion, but now softened with a tender adoration. His thumb brushed a stray strand of hair from her damp forehead. "Are you all right?" he whispered, his voice still hoarse. She nodded, a small breathless smile gracing her lips. "More than all right," she managed, her voice a weak, happy sigh. "Incredible." He smiled back, a genuine heartfelt smile that reached his eyes, making them crinkle at the corners. He shifted his weight carefully, easing the pressure on her, but not withdrawing entirely. He moved to his side, pulling her with him, so they lay facing each other, still intimately connected. He wrapped an arm around her waist, pulling her closer until her head rested on his shoulder. Her ear against his rapidly slowing heart. The warmth of his body enveloped her, a comforting cocoon after the storm of passion. She could feel the lingering tremors in her muscles, the pleasant ache in her core. A sweet reminder of the exquisite journey they had just taken together. She closed her eyes, savoring the moment, the scent of him, a heady mix of musk, desire, and something uniquely him, filling her senses. I can't believe that," she murmured, the words barely audible. He chuckled softly, the sound vibrating through her. "Believe it," he whispered back, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "It was real, more real than anything I've ever felt." His words resonated deep within her, echoing her own unspoken feelings. It wasn't real. This wasn't just a fleeting encounter. It felt like a culmination, a beginning, a destiny unfolding. She reached up, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw, feeling the slight stubble beneath her touch. He leaned into her touch, his eyes closing for a moment in contentment. "I never imagined," she started, then trailed off, unsure how to articulate the profound shift that had just occurred within her. He seemed to understand. "Me neither," he finished for her, his voice tender. "I've waited for you, I think, without even knowing it." A warmth spread through her chest, a feeling even more potent than the afterglow of their passion. To be wanted, to be waited for, to be seen as the one. It was an overwhelming, beautiful realization. She nestled closer, her body molding perfectly against his, as if they were two pieces of a puzzle finally fitting together. They lay in comfortable silence for a long time. The only sounds the gentle rhythm of their breathing, and the distant chirping of crickets outside the window. The moon cast a soft, ethereal glow through the sheer curtains, painting the room in shades of silver and shadow, lending an almost magical quality to their intimacy. After a while he stirred again, gently disentangling himself just enough to reach for the blanket at the foot of the bed. He pulled it up over them, tucking it snugly around their shoulders, his movements tender and solicitous. The cool air of the room was a pleasant contrast to the heat of their bodies, and the added warmth of the blanket felt like another layer of his care. "Cold?" he asked, his voice low and concerned. "No," she whispered, "just perfect." He smiled, a soft, contented smile, and tightened his arm around her, pulling her back into the curve of his body. Her back was pressed against his chest, his chin resting lightly on her head, his breath warm against her hair. She could feel the steady beat of his heart against her back, a soothing, reassuring rhythm that lulled her into a state of blissful peace. She felt utterly safe, utterly cherished. All the anxieties, all the uncertainties that had plagued her before, seemed to have melted away in the crucible of their shared passion. There was only this moment, this man, this profound connection that felt like coming home. "I don't want to move," she confessed, her voice thick with contentment. "We don't have to," he replied, his voice a low rumble, already thick with sleep. "Not ever if you don't want to." She smiled into the darkness, a private, joyous smile. His casual statement held a depth of meaning that resonated deeply within her. It wasn't just about staying in bed, it was about staying together, about a future that stretched out before them, bright and full of promise. She felt the slow, steady pull of sleep, a peaceful exhaustion settling over her. But even as her eyelids grew heavy, her mind was alight with images of him, of their shared passion, of the tenderness that followed. This wasn't just a night, it was a turning point. She drifted off, nestled in his embrace, feeling utterly secure, utterly loved. Hours later, she awoke slowly, gradually becoming aware of the world around her. The moon had given way to the soft, pale light of dawn, filtering through the curtains. The room was no longer dark, but bathed in a gentle, warm glow. She was still in his arms, her body spooned against his arm a comforting weight around her waist. His breath was soft, and even against the back of her neck, a testament to his deep sleep. She shifted slightly, just enough to turn her head and look at him. He was sleeping soundly, his face relaxed, a faint stubble darkening his jaw. His dark hair was tousled, falling artfully across his forehead. He looked utterly peaceful, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen him before. She felt a surge of tenderness so powerful it made her chest ache. Carefully, so as not to wake him, she lifted her hand and gently traced the line of his jaw, her fingers brushing against the rough stubble. His skin was warm beneath her touch. She admired the strong curve of his neck, the broad expanse of his shoulders, the powerful arm that held her close. He was beautiful, not just in his physique, but in the kindness she had seen in his eyes, the passion he had unleashed, the tenderness he now offered. A memory of the night before washed over her, vivid and intoxicating. The way he had looked at her, the way he had touched her, the way he had made her feel utterly alive, utterly desired. A blush crept up her neck, even in the privacy of her thoughts. It had been more than just physical. It had been an awakening, a profound connection of souls. She watched him sleep for a long moment, a quiet reverence settling over her. She felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for this night, for him, for the unexpected beauty they had found together. It felt like a dream, yet the warmth of his body, the scent of him, the lingering ache in her muscles, all confirmed its undeniable reality. He stirred then, a soft groan escaping his lips as he shifted, drawing her closer without even opening his eyes. His arm tightened around her, and she felt a wave of pure comfort wash over her. It was a silent affirmation, a subconscious claiming that spoke volumes. Slowly, his eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes still heavy with sleep, but quickly sharpening as they focused on her. A soft, sleepy smile touched his lips, and his eyes crinkled at the corners. "Good morning," he whispered, his voice still thick with sleep, a low, husky sound that sent a shiver of pleasure through her. "Good morning," she replied, her voice equally soft, a little breathless. She found herself smiling back, a genuine radiant smile that felt effortless. He leaned in, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her forehead, then her temple, then the corner of her mouth. His lips were warm and soft, and the simple gesture was more intimate, more tender, than any passionate kiss could have been in that moment. "Sleep well?" he asked, his thumb gently stroking her hip beneath the blanket. "The best sleep I've had in years," she admitted, her gaze locked with his. "And you?" He chuckled softly. "Even better. You're a very comfortable pillow." His eyes, however, held a deeper meaning, a quiet intensity that spoke of more than just comfort. She laughed, a light, melodious sound that filled the quiet room. "I'm glad I could be of service." He pulled back slightly, propping himself up on one elbow, his eyes still fixed on her. The early morning light caught the planes of his face, highlighting the strong lines, the depth of his gaze. "Seriously though," he said, his voice dropping to a more serious tone, "last night, it was everything, and more." Her heart swelled with emotion. "For me too," she confessed, her voice a little shaky. I don't know what to say." He reached out, his hand gently cupping her cheek, his thumb stroking her skin. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "Just be here." His words were a balm to her soul, a quiet promise of presence and continuity. She leaned into his touch, closing her eyes for a moment, savoring the feeling of his hand on her skin, the weight of his gaze. When she opened her eyes again, she met his, and in their depths, she saw not just desire, but a profound understanding, a deep, abiding connection that transcended words. The unspoken question hung in the air, a delicate thread between them. What now? But it wasn't a question born of anxiety, but of hopeful anticipation. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet certainty that whatever came next, they would face it together. He slowly leaned down, his lips brushing hers, a soft, lingering kiss that was both a greeting and a promise. It was tender, full of unspoken affection, a taste of the morning, a reaffirmation of the night. She responded instantly, her lips parting slightly, inviting him deeper. The kiss deepened, a slow, sensual exploration that ignited a gentle warmth within her, a quiet flicker of the passion that still lay dormant, ready to be rekindled. When they finally broke apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers, their eyes still closed, savoring the lingering taste of each other. "I should probably get up," he murmured, though he made no move to do so. "Maybe later," she whispered, her fingers tangling in his hair at the nape of his neck. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound. "I like the sound of later." He pulled back slightly, his eyes sparkling with a playful glint. "Breakfast?" Her stomach rumbled faintly in agreement. "That sounds wonderful. I make a mean stack of pancakes," he boasted, a confident grin spreading across his face. "And coffee. Lots of coffee." "Pancakes and coffee sound perfect," she agreed, her heart light. "But I might need some help getting out of bed first." She gave him a suggestive look, a playful challenge in her eyes. He met her gaze, his smile deepening, a spark of renewed desire igniting in his eyes. He leaned down, his lips tracing the curve of her collarbone, sending a shiver through her. "My pleasure," he whispered, his voice husky, and she knew that the morning had only just begun. The day stretched before them, full of possibilities, full of the quiet promise of a love that was just beginning to bloom, tender and vibrant in the gentle morning light. He leaned down, his lips tracing the curve of her collarbone, sending a shiver through her. "My pleasure," he whispered, his voice husky, and she knew that the morning had only just begun. The day stretched before them, full of possibilities, full of the quiet promise of a love that was just beginning to bloom, tender and vibrant in the gentle morning light. His lips lingered on her warm skin, a butterfly touch that sent ripples of sensation outward. Then, slowly, deliberately, he moved upward, grazing the sensitive skin behind her ear, tracing the delicate curve of her jawline. Her breath hitched as his warmth met her temple, and then, finally, his mouth found hers. It was not a kiss of urgency, but of profound connection, a slow, languid exploration that tasted of sleep and longing. His tongue danced with hers, a gentle, intoxicating rhythm that spoke volumes without a single word. She felt herself melt into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, pulling him closer until there was no space left between them. The world outside the soft cocoon of the bed faded into insignificance, replaced by the symphony of their breaths, the soft brush of skin, the quiet thrum of desire. They lay entwined for what felt like an eternity, simply existing in each other's embrace, the silence punctuated by soft murmurs and tender kisses. His fingers threaded through her hair, a soothing rhythmic motion that lulled her into a deeper state of contentment. Her head rested against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, a comforting anchor in the dawning day. Eventually, a soft rumble from her stomach broke the spell, eliciting a low chuckle from him. "Hungry, my love?" he murmured, his voice still husky with sleep and affection. She nodded, a lazy smile playing on her lips. "Perhaps a little, but I'm in no hurry to leave this." He kissed the top of her head. "Neither am I. But I suspect the promise of fresh coffee might tempt even you." With a reluctant sigh, they untangled themselves, the cool morning air a gentle shock against their warm skin. Moving through the sun-drenched apartment, their movements were synchronized, a quiet dance of domestic intimacy. He made the coffee, its rich aroma filling the air, while she gathered ingredients for a simple breakfast. Their hands brushed as they reached for the same spoon, a spark igniting in the brief contact. Their eyes met across the kitchen island, a silent conversation passing between them, a promise of more to come, a shared understanding of the delicious anticipation that hummed beneath the surface of their morning routine. The shared laughter over a slightly burnt piece of toast, the lingering touch as he handed her a steaming mug, all wove together into a tapestry of quiet, sensual joy. After breakfast, the day stretched out, an open canvas. They decided against venturing out, choosing instead to bask in the quiet luxury of each other's company within the sanctuary of his home. He put on some mellow jazz, its smooth notes filling the living room, creating an atmosphere of sophisticated ease. They settled onto the plush sofa, a thick cashmere throw draped over them, sharing a book of poetry, their shoulders touching, his arm casually draped around her. She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the gentle rise and fall of his chest with each breath. His voice, a low rumble, read lines that seemed to echo their own burgeoning love, and she felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. Occasionally, he would pause, his fingers idly tracing patterns on her arm, or he would turn the page, his knuckles brushing her cheek as he did so. Each touch was light, almost accidental, yet charged with an electric awareness that made her skin tingle. She found herself drifting, not just in the poetry, but in the sheer presence of him, the way he smelled of crisp linen and a hint of sandalwood, the warmth emanating from his body. The afternoon wore on, a slow, sweet progression. The sunlight shifted, painting golden stripes across the floor, then softening into a warm amber glow as evening approached. The music continued, a gentle counterpoint to their quiet companionability. The unspoken desire that had been simmering between them all day now began to build, a palpable energy in the air. A pause in the music, a moment of silence. He turned his head, his gaze finding hers, deep and searching. In his eyes, she saw not just affection, but a hunger that mirrored her own. He reached out, his hand gently cupping her jaw, his thumb stroking the soft skin beneath her ear. The touch was feather-light, yet it sent a shiver through her, a wave of liquid heat pooling low in her belly. Her own hand instinctively rose, her fingers tracing the strong line of his arm, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath the soft fabric of his shirt. "I think," he whispered, his voice dropping to a low, intimate register, "I've had enough of poetry for one day." A soft laugh escaped her lips, a breathy sound that was half nervous, half eager. "Oh, yes," he confirmed, his eyes never leaving hers. "I think it's time for a different kind of language." He leaned in then, slowly, giving her ample time to respond, to meet him halfway. And she did. Their lips met in a tender, unhurried kiss that deepened quickly, fueled by the day's delicious anticipation. It was a kiss of release, of surrender, of long-held passion finally given permission to ignite. His hand moved from her jaw to the nape of her neck, his fingers tangling in her hair, tilting her head to allow for a more profound connection. Her fingers, in turn, found their way beneath his shirt, exploring the warm, taut skin of his back, feeling the ripple of muscle beneath her touch. The cashmere throw slipped to the floor, forgotten. The poetry book lay open on the sofa, its pages unread. All that mattered was the feel of his mouth on hers, the press of his body against hers, the growing urgency that pulsed between them. He broke the kiss, only to pepper soft kisses down her neck, along her collarbone, sending delicious shivers through her. Her head fell back, a soft moan escaping her lips, as his mouth found the sensitive hollow of her throat. "You are exquisite," he breathed against her skin, his words a warm caress. "Absolutely exquisite." His hands moved to the hem of her sweater, his fingers brushing against her skin as he slowly, deliberately, began to lift it. She helped him, her arms rising, Her eyes locked with his as the fabric came away, revealing the delicate lace of her camisole beneath. He drew a sharp breath, his gaze lingering on the swell of her breasts, the shadowed valley between them. Then, with a slow, almost reverent motion, his fingers unfastened the tiny buttons of her camisole, one by one, until it, too, fell open, revealing the soft curve of her skin. She watched him, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, a mix of vulnerability and exhilarating desire. There was no shame, only an overwhelming sense of being seen, cherished, desired. Her own hands, trembling slightly, reached for the buttons of his shirt, slowly working them free, eager to feel the warmth of his skin against hers. As his shirt parted, revealing the sculpted planes of his chest, she leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to his sternum, tasting the salt and musk of him. He lifted her then effortlessly, carrying her into the bedroom. The room was bathed in the soft, diffused light of the setting sun, painting the walls in hues of rose and gold. He laid her gently on the bed, the crisp white sheets a stark contrast to their flushed skin. He followed her down, his weight supported on his forearms, his eyes never leaving hers. "Beautiful," he whispered again, his gaze sweeping over her, a look of profound adoration in his eyes. Then, slowly, deliberately, he began to shed the rest of their clothes, each garment a soft whisper to the floor, until they lay skin to skin, a tangle of limbs and yearning. The touch of his bare skin against hers was an electric current, igniting every nerve ending. His hands explored the landscape of her body, tracing the curve of her hip, the line of her thigh, the soft swell of her breast. Each touch was a promise, each kiss a deepening commitment. Their lovemaking was a symphony of sensation, a slow, passionate dance of discovery and surrender. There was no rush, only a profound desire to savor every moment, every exquisite feeling. Her fingers tangled in his hair as his mouth found hers again, a hungry, possessive kiss that stole her breath away. His body moved with hers, a perfect rhythm that built an intensity, a crescendo of sighs and gasps. She arched into him, her body a willing vessel for his passion, her heart overflowing with a love that felt both new and ancient. The world outside ceased to exist, replaced by the intimate universe they created between them. His breath on her neck, the scent of their mingled desire, the soft sounds of pleasure that escaped their lips, all combined into a powerful, intoxicating experience. Their bodies became one, a perfect fit, moving in an ancient, primal rhythm that led them higher and higher, until they reached the peak of their shared ecstasy, a breathtaking explosion of sensation that left them breathless, trembling, utterly consumed. Slowly, gently, they drifted back down, their bodies still intimately intertwined, the lingering echoes of their passion humming beneath their skin. He held her close, her head nestled against his shoulder, listening to the steady beat of his heart, now calmer, but still robust. His fingers stroked her hair, a gentle, soothing rhythm that spoke of comfort and deep affection. "My love," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "you are everything." She stirred, pressing a soft kiss to his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin, the comforting weight of his arm around her. "And you, my darling," she murmured, her voice soft with contentment, "are more than I ever dreamed." As the last vestiges of twilight faded, plunging the room into a gentle darkness, they lay wrapped in each other's arms, bathed in the afterglow of their shared intimacy. The quiet promise of a love that was just beginning to bloom had now taken root, deep and strong, nourished by the tender passion of their day. The possibilities that had stretched before them that morning had been beautifully realized, sealing a bond that felt both exhilaratingly new and profoundly everlasting. And as sleep began to claim them, entwined and content, she knew that this was not just the end of a perfect day, but the beginning of a lifetime of shared mornings, full of love, laughter, and the exquisite joy of simply being together.